I call this House to Order. This is judge test for the Japan BP 2013. The motion for the judge test is this House believes that schools should put the student into the classes according to their academic ability from the early stages of the education. Without any further ado, I welcome Honorable Prime Minister to speak the motion, standing in his name. Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. School is a place for you to actualize your own ability and express your own ability so that you can actually self-actualize your best potential. And we say, Mr. Speaker, this policy maximizes the student's ability. And we say, Mr. Speaker, especially from the young age, we need to take this policy because we can actually best maximize the student ability and ensure the student opportunity to access and actualize their own dream. This is the basic stand we take on our side of the house. So I'm going to talk to you three things. Number one, I'm going to talk to you what is the score and what is the principal justification we apply to this motion. But secondly, we talk to you why we need to take this policy from the early ages. But thirdly, we're going to talk to you what is the problem for the student who are smart and the student who are less smart and will be beneficial by taking this policy. But before that, definition. So, Mr. Speaker, I have 4 points. Number one, we're gonna make a spectrum in the certain subjects. For example, like we're gonna make the 4 math classes for the student who is smart, and the student who is poor. But secondly, we're gonna introduce the test in each year to assess the student's ability. And we are more than happy to change this interval for such as like a semesters, but we don't think that is the core point of this debate. But thirdly, we actually we make the spectrum in the class in every subject, such as like the student who is smart can be in the lower grade English classes, because obviously the student do have their potential in different subjects. But fourthly, we don't actually make the stream classes in the homeroom or like a school trip. We don't think there is no necessity because we want to focus upon the maximizing student ability in terms of academic level. So moving on to the first issue, what is the school and why the school needs to prioritize academic ability and why we have the justification to do so. I have 2 points here. Number one, we say the school is to ensure your academic ability. We don't think that, we believe this is a consensus in this debate. But why this is important? Because the students can actually, by having, Mr. Speaker, this school academic ability, they can actually best maximize their choices. So why this criteria should be top priority for 2 reasons. First, because Mr. Speaker, school is often places for students to only places for students to actualize their own, actualize and maximize their academic ability. Well, especially for poor students who do not have the money to go to the cram school, other kind of external activity, the school is the only place for them to actualize their own academic ability. But secondly, Mr. Speaker, the academic ability is the basis of most of your choices. Such as like if you want to be even like a soccer player, if you really want to get to the good job, Mr. Speaker, the society requires you to have certain academic level to actualize your own will. So like the basis of your is choice is predicated upon the academic ability, Mr. Speaker. That's why the school is necessary. School have to ensure a certain level of the academic ability for the students. But secondly, the school is the place, to inculcate the social social, the picture of the society, such as like we have the moral classes like teach like what is a society and what is a society and how society works, right? And we say the society is actually already stream, such as like we go to the different university and we go to like the different companies, and we say, Mr. Speaker, there is already this kind of the stream does exist in this particular society, and we say at school should be adapting to this kind of society so that we can actually teach what is the real society that student will face after they graduate to the society. No, thank you. Secondly, so why we need to take policy from the early age? I have 3 points. First, because we say, Mr. Speaker, actually the kids can are more likely to be flexible in early ages. Like they can actually find their own potential for the early ages. So they can actually find the potential in the mathematics. Even they do not find the potential in mathematics, but still, because students start from the early ages, they can actually catch up in later ages, and we say there are more possibility to do. There are more possibility when they start from the early stages. But secondly, we say that if you like spend more time on the advantages, you can actually better maximize your advantage. Simply, you have more time. Simply, you have more opportunity to concentrate your own advantage. That actually makes your ability maximized. No, thank you. But thirdly, we say. But thirdly, we say, Mr. Speaker, this why we need such early ages. Most importantly, because your once you delay your academic ability, it will be harder for you to catch up, especially for the student who is poor in academic grant. Such that you do not understand your elementary school material, it will be harder for you to understand junior high school material and senior high school material. That's why we need to start from the early ages so that we can actually fulfill the basic academic level on our side of the house. Mr. Speaker, I'll take from the closing.
Especially in the early stages, there are physical differences exist between the higher students or lower students. Don't you think so?
Even we consider that exists, we don't understand why it relates to this motion. So firstly, we say, Mr. Speaker, what is the problem for the small student? We say it will be harmful for the small students because even they acknowledge they have the more better ability, but students still have to study the things that they are already understood, Mr. Speaker. In that case, they are actually paying the opportunity cost and they could not maximize his own ability. Otherwise, they could have even be better. But secondly, the poor student, Mr. Speaker, it is especially harmful. Why? First, because they will be often delayed, because the class often proceeds by leaving them, Mr. Speaker, because the teacher have obligation to proceed the class, and a teacher cannot ignore the student who are delayed, Mr. Speaker, under their product. But secondly, it will be harder for the student to voice up to the teacher. If you see, Mr. Speaker, the small student, you will feel shameful to ask the student, because, Mr. Speaker, and this kind of the things deter students to ask and catch up to the academic proceedings. So why our side is better for 3 reasons. First, because a smart student can best accuracy on where we think this is obvious. But secondly, the poor academic level student can ask the teacher, goes to the teacher without feeling shameful, Mr. Speaker. They can have more opportunity to catch up. But thirdly, the poor student better understand. Why? Because simply the teacher can more likely to focus upon and this poor teacher, because poor student. But secondly, these students can learn their own paces more likely under our product. For these all reasons, our side is better for the student and better for the student's future. That's what we beg you to propose. Thank you.
I thank Prime Minister for speech. Now I call Leader of Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and hello, ladies and gentlemen in this house. So, as the opposing side, we agree to government side that school is a place to educate children for the future of the children. Well, we agree to that. But as the clear stance on the opposing side is that academic skills is important, but also that school is not only a place. It's not a place only to teach academic skills. School is also a place to teach other skills like communication or so, and diversity is really important at these places. So we have schools, so this is and diversity, when you get adult, this way of communication or so is really important, because when you get adult, ability to accept diversity is really important when you communicate with other employees that have different ideas, that were poor or that were smart or whatsoever. So and when you get adults, these diversity is really important when you get adults. So we want to achieve diversity, and so as of society we want to achieve diversity. So in my speech, I would like to explain about 2 points. So first, how should schools be? And secondly, how harmful, what kind of harm is going to occur after taking this proposal? So, but before that, I would like to make some reviews to the previous speaker. So first, they said, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, 2 reviews. Three reviews. So first, they said that these. For poor students, this is the only place to get academic materials. But under the state school, give like things like giving more homework to poor students are already done. There are alternative ways for the poor students to get education, and this is not the only way to give the proper education to these poor students. And secondly, they said it is really hard to catch up these academic skills. Well, first but to respond. So first, this is not true always, because elementary school students who couldn't do so well when they were elementary schools are some of those students are getting some of those students could go to good college or get good job because this hard to catch up is not always true, because you can study at other places like transport or so, and at school so if you try hard, this hard to catch up is not true always, and even if it is not true always. So I'd like to move on to our point. So first, how should school be? So school should be a place to educate children for the future of the children. So that is why these academic skills is prioritized at schools, because these academic skills are really important when you get adults. These academic skills is academic skills is really important when you get adults. But not only academic skills. Even if you have academic skills, that is not it is not enough always, because even if you have academic skills, if you don't have the ability to communicate with others, you can't even if you have the knowledge, you can't work properly with other people. For example, like you're really good at math, and you want to use that ability at a company, but because you can't communicate with other people, you can't show how good you can do, how you can do this, how you can make good use of this ability, and you can make good use of that ability in the company. So in terms of that, diversity is really important, because diversity is going to promote, yes.
Even we as debater good at English, but we obviously have the spectrum in our personality. Why your diversity is not still ensured?
Explain that in my second point. So diversity is really important, because many kind of people are in society with different ideas. We need to cooperate with those people, and because education at these schools is going to make these students achieve diversity. So this is why diversity is so important when you get because when these ability to communicate is really important when you get adults. Now, secondly, so how harmful it is going to be. So under the state school, there's no changes in the class. There's almost no changes in the class at the early stage. So everyone is going to get equal education, and parent and teacher don't focus only on education. Maybe they're going to focus on sports or on the way of how well the children communicate with each other, and children have contact with various students, poor or rich or smart or not smart. They're in the same classroom, communicating with each other, getting ideas from them. So what is the benefit of this? So they know why so when they get adults, they know why these people can do well, or what kind of idea these people have, like for example, like brilliant ideas or so on. So the benefit is that we can communicate. They're going to achieve ability to communicate with various people. But after taking the first proposal, this kind of benefit is going to occur no more, because the idea because those parents and teachers and children are going to get idea that education is everything. So I'd like to explain about those three factors: parents, teachers, and children. So first, parents. So parents want their children to be in a higher class because they're thinking of their children, and they believe that academic skills is going to be for their children. So they're going to say to the children, for example, like, don't play with children at the lower class. Don't speak with children who cannot do English so well because they're not smart. They're not the one who you should be friends with. That is how the parents want to react. And secondly, the teachers. Teachers are going to educate higher class even more. They're going to focus mainly on the smart children and certainly children. So they will be put bias, especially because at the early stage they're immature. They're going to believe everything that is told by the teacher and parents. Parents tell them that don't be smart, and teachers also tell them that to be good at education. So they put an environment. So for example, they're going to be put a bias that education is everything. So like children, so what's going to occur is that children can't accept diversity. They're going to accept only smart children or smart children because they only know that the only criteria of is that smart is everything. So the harm is that the children can't accept diversity when they get adults because they haven't got education of acceptance. So for other reasons, we are very proud to oppose this motion.
I thank speaker for speech. Now I invite Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of this House. School is not a place to show the children unrealistic society. Status quo society is kind of the meritocratic, so students have to watch such kind of real society, and students have to accept such real society, and they get ability to communicate in such kind of meritocratic society, right? So on that situation, we want to propose this motion. Academic ability, division in the academic ability is very important in the real society. So, as a Deputy Prime Minister, I want to discuss two issues. The first issue is about academic ability. Second issue is about the social skill coming from today's level position. All limitation, including my point. Okay, today the level position explained to us the social skill and communication skill is very important. So from the beginning, the school have to focus, prioritize such kind of social skill from the beginning. But we think that, the school have to somehow prioritize academic ability in the uniqueness of school. Like what my other partner explained to us, school is a unique place to give the academic education to the children, right? Because especially for the poor student, there are no place to get other education. But on the other hand, about social skill, there are many places, like in your house or in your neighborhood or the daily life. Right? So on that issue, in the viewpoint of uniqueness, the giving academic skill is more important for the school education from the beginning. And I want to explain to you, in the viewpoint of the social skill, I mean the communication skill in the society, taking this proposal is very important. What my honorable partner explained to you later, please. What my honorable partner explained to you, status quo in the society take the meritocratic stance, right? Because in the business, the company prioritize the productivity, right? Because companies profit seeker, because they prioritize who have the good ability. Sometimes they separate the good ability people about ability people. So on that issue, please look at status quo society. If you go to the Google, there are many people who have same ability, same academic ability with you. On that issue, you need the ability to discuss or communicate with same ability people, same academic ability people, right? The who share the same level knowledge or something like that. But unfortunately, what is status quo? Status quo because all people gather together in same room. The students have no experience, no opportunity to communicate with such kind of same academic level student. That is very. I want to explain later, but that is very serious problem. Okay, closing.
You say if there's a racial discrimination in the real society, you want to educate children in a school. Don't you think so?
We didn't think so. Of course, moral education is important. I want to explain later. Even taking this proposal, we can achieve moral education, so there are no problem from the beginning. Okay, what I want to explain to you, rather taking our proposal, social skill will improve. In the real society. As I said before, the society is somehow meritocratic society, right? Mean that after they enter the society, students have the opportunity to separate with good people, separate between good people or bad people, and they suddenly feel such kind of separation. They have high possibility. They have no idea to how they manage yourself or something like that. They have possibility they go to depression or something like that. So on that issue, because there are no experience in the early ages, children they have no ability how to manage themselves or how to come back such kind of depression. That is very problematic thing. But after taking this proposal, in the early age, somehow children get such kind of separation between the academic ability. Or there are many experiences. The children know how to come back to the depression. Or in the early ages, there are many supervisors, right? A teacher or some advisor or counselor, something like that. There are many supporters, family, right? So on that issue, early ages is the best place to children get such kind of ability from the beginning, right? So on that issue, if we want to protect children after they enter the society, we have to show the actual society to children from the beginning. Later, please. And secondly, I want to discuss the academic ability. What Monoman Pata explained to you is that they cannot deny academic ability is important, right? Because my Monoman Pata explained to you, academic ability is connected your own future, right? If we want to be the teacher, of course you need certain academic or something like that. So on that issue, status quo, because we gather together all children, what Honorable Father explained to you is that the poor student cannot get the proper education, because what Honorable Father explained, they never refuted back is that in the poor. Because teacher have to show the 40 student or 50 student, there are no room to the teacher focus on the poor student. Even the poor student cannot understand the mathematics problem or something like that, right? So on that issue, the status quo, even the basic knowledge, the calculation, something or writing kanji, reading kanji or something like that, children they keep their problem still because there are no opportunity to ask teacher to solve how to solve the problem or something like that. That is very problematic, right? Because they cannot get basic education, means that they cannot get the job they want to get in the society or something like that. But after taking this proposal, what my honorable father explained to you is that because the teacher in the poor academic class can focus each children, because there are many the possibility that 5 teachers teaching to them, or such kind of special teacher teaching to them. So on that situation, rather taking this proposal, the poor student can get high academic or basic academic skill, and that is contribute their future, right? So on that issue, as long as school is a unique place to giving academic education, then we have to take in this proposal to protect children's own future. So in the viewpoint of social skill, academic skill, we beg to propose today's motion. Thank you.
I thank speaker for speech. Now I invite Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Yes, we concede that academic ability is important to some extent. Yes, we concede that academic ability, and actually the school is actually the major society and should represent what the society is like, what the actually like the company is in like. But Mr. Speaker, we think that cannot be the reason to make the academic ability the sole criteria to decide everything, especially among the early stages. Based on that, I'll talk about two things in my speech. First, I'd like to further examine my partner's case because we simply think about the norm being created and how the bias value will be imposed. And secondly, I'd like to talk about what kind of people will actually marginalized by the academic ability, by the norm that will be created and how it's so harmful. But before that, rebuttals for that side of the house. So firstly, what we heard from Deputy Prime Minister is that like in companies like Google's, like this kind of value is important and being able to communicate with the same academic ability of people of same academic ability is important. Two responses to that. Yes, we can see that there's the companies like Google that have the tendency to be so, but you have to recognize the majority of the company is not so. Look at the example of pharmaceutical company. They are market researchers which actually work at the exact place and they are executives. These kind of two actors always have to communicate and we have to recognize that their academic ability is not always equal. But secondly, more importantly, even if the problem exists, you have to recognize that gradually after 10 or 20 years, all the people will become in the same situation. So what's the problem? Is it how the problem they propose would happen? We could not recognize. The second rebuttal we brought from our side of the house is the simple logic we heard from that side of the house. That after imposing this plan, these kind of people will actually be able to study. But the question that these affirmative side have to answer is that why the minimum standard that's actually already provided under the status quo is not important. Firstly, I'd like to show you why the minimum standard already exists under the status quo. Because simply we think there's already PTAs or other kinds of external actors existing to always criticize to the teacher to actually whether or not they are actually managing or actually supervising each student well done or not. But secondly, more importantly, even if to some extent that's a problem, we're more than happy to actually impose the unified test to actually measure or like to actually further incentivize the teacher to actually make more students study. But thirdly, what we heard from that side of the house, from the Deputy Prime Minister in her last 1 minute, is that under the status quo, the people somehow the teachers cannot focus on poor people. First, I could not recognize why this would happen, but you have to recognize that even after we take this plan, the situation that there are 40 people in the same classroom would exist. So how the problem will be fixed? You have to recognize that to some extent there's going to be some poor academic people that will be marginalized in the classroom. So having rebutted toward that side of the house, moving on to my substantive. First, I'd like to explain why this value is going to stay. My partner brought you is like is that the cooperation or the diverse value and understanding this kind of value is important. I'd like to further explain how it will be actually distorted after we take this plan. Simply, we think that as today's opening government conceded, to some extent, the academic ability, the norm that academic ability is important will be created. But you have to recognize that because the academic ability is good, will be actually created. We say that these kind of people, we say that there's going to be a biased value. Well, even in the spheres outside of school, when you actually talk to other people, when you talk to other people, you always recognize, oh, you're in that classroom or those kind of things. But secondly, more importantly, you have to recognize that academic skill actually already represents something much more important, which is about the rich and the poor. Because simply the rich people have the tendency to be intelligent, simply because of their capacity to send their children to the classroom, or the poor people have the tendency to be less intelligent comparatively looking to rich people. Because of these kind of tendency always exist, you have to recognize the academic value is not only the symbol of the academic ability itself, but also the representation of the rich and the poor. Why is this problematic? Because simply because especially in the students in the early stage, they're actually sensitive to everything. Because the school is the first function, the first society which these kind of children enter, and the first actor, which is except for the parents to receive the education. They are very sensitive and they are very vulnerable to every kind of act, and we say this subconscious value is actually problematic because in the society you have to recognize, yes, to some extent the company may be classified, but you have to recognize the majority of society is conceited of the diverse value, diverse ethnicity, and all those kinds of stuff. Before we move to the second issue, closing.
So when you try to educate the importance of that diversity, why that education cannot be conducted after the early stages of education, such as the high school or university or so forth? Please explain.
Simply we think that diversity, and we think that then you have to answer why imposing academic value or that is actually already under the status quo, like in high school, is not important at the first place. So what the second issue about academic ability or those kind of things, you have to recognize that, especially in the children in early stages, the majority of the children have not recognized what they're potentially good or what they're potentially bad. And we think that school is a place to some extent to actually recognize these kind of places. I think that's it. Why is that? Firstly, you have to recognize the characterization of the school. As I already told you in my first argument, school is like actually the first place for the actors, especially for the parents, to actually impose their value in, which I mean the teacher. The teacher is the first external actor for the children to actually impose a different value, which is actually different societal values in these kind of things. But secondly, you have to recognize in the cases of public schools or even in the case of private schools, these kind of schools are funded by tax to some extent. So we think that it has to be efficient to some extent because simply already under the status quo, we do not fund religious school or ethnic school to actually maximize to make society much more better. So what's the concrete harm that's going to happen after we take this one? Simply, we think to some extent the parents or the teachers will be actually incentivized to force these kinds of children to study from two precise reasons. Firstly, because the family to some extent care about the labeling of the children's academic ability, because the family themselves do not want to be seen that the parents or that their students are not good at academic ability. But secondly, more importantly, we think the children themselves would actually be incentivized to actually compete within each other in the same classroom to actually raise the academic ability. So they actively increase the amount of time they impose into study, which is so simply because time is limited, the time they already spend on their subjects like music or like sports will actually decrease comparatively looking to the status quo, and actually rather minimizes the ability to recognize the potential which is not recognized under the status quo. Mr. Speaker, what we brought you from opening opposition is very simple. You have to recognize that students that already study under the status quo or students who have no incentive to study under the status quo is actually completely out of the debate. We have to recognize that majority is actually swayed, and actually we have to recognize this ability. For all these reasons, we're very proud to oppose.
I thank Speaker for speech. Now I call member of government.
So I'm going to explain the mechanism why the status quo, the poor student also suffering, and this high academic ability student also suffering. I'd like to explain the mechanism that opening government doesn't explain. And also I explain why that this proposal we can effectively save these two types of the person with clear mechanism, but we are the rebuttal to the opening opposition. So firstly, this is that. So after taking this proposal, we must separate the children's potential talent such as music or sports that doesn't related to academic performance. But that is simply not true. Why this? Because when we consider this kind of issue, let's consider about the characterization of the teacher. We think the teacher is by nature teacher is good person and consider about the children's future because they become the teacher. They love the children and they become teacher. That's why we think even under this system, teacher consider about children's future. And if children's talent is so shining, such as music or sports, their talent is so shining, teacher focus on and encourage children even under this system. That's why their mother doesn't. Secondly, they say that diversity is very, very important, and I think it's proposal this education cannot be achieved. So I have two responses. Why we think they never ever explain why in the status quo diversity education can be successfully done. In terms of this point, we think the lacking of diversity education cannot be achieved in the status quo in the early stage education. Why is that? Because even if they are in the rich people and just poor people are in the class, that doesn't mean they can understand each other. Because when they see even in the class, when these poor students see the rich people, these poor students feel so huge difference to them and me, because he have more money and more luxury. Also he can have more good academic abilities done. In that situation, he feels the so difference with him, and rather making the group with same poor student, same things can say in the kind of the rich. In that situation, they never ever communicate effectively. That's why we cannot support the status quo even in terms of the diversity. Secondly, that as I told you in my point of information, that this kind of the education can be achieved after the not early stages, rather after the early stages education, such as high school or university, or so sit down. So such as in the case of the school festival, the many students cooperate with each other and also understand each other. They never ever explain why that is not enough. More than that, even in the early stages, there as I told you, there is homeroom or the school festival or like the example of the untokai. So in that situation, if the teacher encourages to communicate, that can be achieved. So that Baka understand. So moving on to our part, whether any point of information, Akiko.
We told you that the subconscious mind will be created because academic norm will be created. Why under your paradigm, after being in high school or junior high school, the communication ability could be achieved?
Simply because even when you become junior high school, university student, you have more imagination ability than think of other kind of people. In that situation, you can more likely to understand other people than the children, right? So moving on to our issue. So why in the status quo, the poor people and rich people are still suffering? So in the status quo, the school must accept all people's opinion and other consequences of that school cannot fulfill the requirement both poor and rich. Why it is? Because when the school makes education too easy, too minimal standard, of course there is criticism of the parents coming from the genius rich student that education is too easy. That's why it's other consequences of that. School cannot fit the level or cannot provide the level of the education that fit the too poor student. Same things happen in the case of the rich. If the school's education makes too high level, of course the poor student sit down. Poor student anger and criticize that this education is too hard for my son, my daughter. That's why make the education to make easy. Other consequences of the school's education become too halfway and cannot fulfill each body. Other consequences that for poor students, the school's education is too extremely hard to understand, and for the rich student, their education is too easy and so boring. More than that, sit down. More than that, we think additionally, this kind of the mixture situation make the so genius and top student oppress the so genius and top level students' academic ability. Why is that? Because after in the status quo, too good academic ability makes the standing feature and become when you have the two good academic ability, you become the minority. And in that situation, the two genius students feel the doubt that if I have two good academic ability, I am become minority and isolated in the class. And in most cases, suffering from the bullying. And as a consequence of the potentially, the two genius students oppress their talent and they can effectively increase their talent. But after taking this proposal, we can change this situation. Why this? Because after taking this proposal, the two genius students need not to suppress their academic ability simply because they are in the class. There's other many junior students and they need not to be minority, so they don't fear such kind of the bullying situation or minority situation. More than that, of course, for poor people, because school don't care about any kind of criticism of rich people or too poor people. That's why school can provide more better education for each individual. And that's why overall we can achieve more good society. That's why we better propose.
Next speaker for speech. Now I call member of opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen. Three things I'll be talking about in this debate. Firstly, as a rebuttal to the government bench, why we need the academic diversity. Secondly, as a rebuttal or answer to the opening government bench, we should not reflect the social norm in the early stage or not. Third, I'm talking about from the aspect of analysis of early stage school days, why we happy to oppose these motions. Firstly, about diversity. Academic ability or academic diversity mainly reflects the economic diversity or economic status. Why is that? Of course, the rich families, parents actually understand why we need to study, why we need to educate their own children and so on. And as a consequence, these parents happy to the children goes to the cram school or happy to make children study hard and so on. On the first examination, there's a differences between the poor children and the rich children. Of course, the consequence is allocated. Of course, the poor children goes to lower classes and the higher children goes to higher classes and so on. So, as a consequence of this proposal, there is a huge spectrum in the class. Huge spectrum. Each classes, of course, higher classes, mainly filled with rich children or rich, educated, learned children, and the lower classes are filled with poor, not educated children. That is the huge differences between the classes. Secondly, after the graduation, we are going to the society, and we see the differences of the learning person or unlearned person. If we're talking about some political issues or some difficult issues, there's a differences of opinion between the poor or not learned person or higher or learned person and so on. And as a consequence, there's a differences in the business scene or there's different community in the business scenes. So we have to educate the children blanketly. Thirdly, of course, in that situations, poor highly likely to give up to catch up with the rich children. Why is that? Because at the first examinations, of course, the poor cannot go to the higher classes because they are poor or because they are not educated in the early stage or the before. And of course, the poor person will feel inferiority because they are labeled in the lower classes. No, thank you. Secondly, of course, I like to in the status quo, we need to show the spectrum in one classes in the status quo. Why is that? Because there's a really learning students in one classes, and the other hand, there's a not learning students. Because the learning students happy to educate the friends or happy to support the friends by teaching the mathematics or by teaching the importance of studying or teaching or make sure them of the happiness or pleasure of studying and so on. This is a very important point because the school is focused on the communication or relationship between students and students. No, thank you. Secondly, about as a rebuttal to the opening government side, why we should not reflect the social norm. Firstly, as my point of information, the school is only the place willing to oppose the social norm. For example, the gender norm. Of course, the old school happy to educate the equally to women and men, or female and male. And on the other hand, many universities happy to welcome the black person or some minority persons and so on. Yes, we should not introduce the religious differences or racial differences into the educations. The only school is the only place to against the social norm. Of course, the academic differences is kind of a social norm. We should not admit that is right and so on. Yes, please.
If they're using the gap of academic ability, the called discrimination or inferiority, why you don't tackle the root cause? After taking this proposal, even you go to the lower class, there are high possibility to teacher focus on you and improving your academic skill. Why you don't tackle on the root cause of the problem?
Of course, after taking this proposal, we could tackle this point. And moreover, in the status quo, as I told you, there's a communication between the rich students and the poor students. And as a consequence, we can see some poor students can be the executive because they are studying hard or because expressed much in their school days and so on. This is a kind of benefit in the status quo. No, thank you. Lastly, we are talking about analysis of in the status quo. Analysis of the early stage of school day, Firstly, about after these proposals, all education focused on the score. Please think about the famous physician, no, thank you, Edison, who are poor to achieve the score in the test. But that Edison is one of the really learned person and one of the who has really excellent skill about the science and so on. So we couldn't see all ability depends on the score of the test and so on. So that is kind of a problem. No, thank you. And moreover, secondly, there's a parents who are proud of their own children and who want to show their children smart. And of course, as a consequence, the parents want to give the pressure to their own children. You have to get a high score on the next examination, or you have to study more and more. And you should not do the game, or should not spend the time with friends, or you have to superior to other students and so on. So there's a strong pressure from our parents, and all children feel the stress from these parents. And of course, the relationship between the family is worse and worse. Secondly, there's a pressure from the community because the students feel the inferiority because they are labeled in the poor classes, or the students feel the superiority because they are labeled in the higher classes. Of course, we will break the community between the students, and of course, the higher classes students feel the superiority or want to do the bully to the lower classes students, as the opening operation said. Thirdly, I'm talking about there's differences of the quality of the teacher. Some teachers are really excellent to educate the children, or some teachers are focused on the educating the relationship or kindnesses or love and so on. Of course, there are the teacher who has strong ability to educate children will go to the higher classes because they want to concentrate on the students who are excellent. So there's a differences. As a consequence, the not excellent teacher goes to the lower classes, and we could not educate the lower children. So we happy to afford small children.
Our next speaker for speech. Now I call government whip.
その経験にエクセスフォーカスしないように本当に
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, what was today's debate about? Today's debate was about whether increasing academic skills is more important over diversity education. So as the closing government, we believe that by enabling these kind of early education, students would be able to have appropriate education that they need. They would be able to take their education that is very suited to them. So therefore, they would have a better academic result. And in the long term, this would benefit students. So before going on to my arguments and stuff, let me first refute on what the previous speaker has said. So the previous speaker has rebutted on our argument, saying that the poor and the rich would be separated because the rich would go to the cram schools and the poor can't afford the money to go to those kind of schools. And they also have refuted that the poor would give up because they would feel labeled and they would feel separated from the other rich students. But however, we can already see that in the current situation, this is already happening. Like, for example, the rich students are going to private schools where they are separated from the other poor students who go to public schools, and because of this, the poor students are being separated from the other rich students. However, so we already see that this is happening in the current situation, and it is meaningless to argue that this would happen by our motion. And in fact, by our motion, this kind of problem would be solved because these kind of poor students would be able to have an education that is very suitable for them. They would have an education that is meant to be taught to them, instead of in the current situation where academically poor students are forced to take classes where they cannot follow what is going on in the class. And they have also came up with a weird analysis saying that for example, Edison became a great inventor even though he wasn't really good in his academic results. Or maybe you can say that Einstein was not really good in his academic results, but he actually became a very successful physicist. But you can see that these are very rare cases. We cannot come up with 10 or 1,000 or 1 million names that these kind of cases actually came true. In fact, in many cases, for company executives and very important people in the government are mainly people who have graduated from very prestigious universities and have had a very good education. So as the closing government, my member has successfully told you how our motion would solve the problem where the poor students and the rich students are conflicting with each other, where the poor students are wanting a more low-level education, and the rich students, the academically good students, are wanting more higher-level education. No, thank you. And because these two students are in the same class, these kind of PTAs are demanding each demanding different education in the school, and because of these PTAs demanding these kind of things, which the opposition somehow claims that this is already helping improve the educational environment, and actually this is not, because this is confusing the educational environment, because And teachers cannot adjust to any of those students. They cannot really provide a very good education for the high-level students, and they cannot provide a very a suitable education for the poor students. No, thank you. And because we have to explain this, and because we have to explain this, we have contributed to this bit in a great extent that it is not only that the academically good students would benefit from this motion, but it is also the academically poor students that that would benefit from the students, and the whole environment in this kind of teaching environment would become substantially better. And so and also I have forgotten to add these rebuttals in my speech. The previous speaker has also said that I've also said that there are teachers who are okay, so let me summarize this debate for you. So this debate was about which is going to be better, and in the opposition.
Given that academic skill is already given under the status quo, already explained to some extent at the minimum standard, where's the necessity to actually give additional benefit, even if this to some extent already achieved under the status quo?
So, because in the current situation, it is these kind of students, this kind of separation is created because of simply because of their financial status, and it is because the poor students cannot go to these kind of very good private schools. But in our motion, we would provide these kind of different classes in the same public school. So even if they are poor, if they are very good in their academic skills, then they can go to these kind of classes that provide them better education, and therefore we will be able to solve this. Problem where these kind of poor students who cannot afford to go to private schools can actually that they can't get the education they want. So we can actually solve this problem by our motion. So this is why we probably propose, and thank you.
I thank speaker for speech. Now I call opposition whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opening opposition did a really good job in terms of talking about why diversity is important, because it reflects the social society and those kind of things. But on this point, there was a big crash, or the big deadlock, because the government was continuously saying that the social norm, meritocracy, or the academic ability is really, really important. Even if we concede this, we think that the status quo is enough, and we think that after taking this proposal, this situation will be exacerbated, especially between the gap between the poor and the rich. We think that, especially concerning the compulsory education, we must make equal opportunity to all. And because of this situation, we are going to actually prioritize the rich. We think this is a major harm coming from the closing opposition. We, the closing opposition, want to say that even if we concede the problem, this is not the way to go, and that is why we're very proud to oppose. Firstly, some refutation to Katoshi, the previous speaker. He said that, look, we already separate classes in private schools. Yes, we do, but we're talking about compulsory education. We're also talking about public education as well. We think that, especially considering the context of public schools, we must make equal opportunity to all. But however, this is different. We think it is exacerbating, so the context of private school is completely different. We're talking about public schools. No, thank you. So, moving on to my argument. Firstly, I have two things to talk about. Firstly, I want to talk about, is there actually a problem in the status quo, especially considering the academic ability, or will it rather exacerbate after taking this proposal, especially considering the gap between the rich and the poor? Second, I want to talk about the social norm. Is the social norm like meritocracy, and even if it's so, is it actually necessary to educate them from an early stage? So moving on to my first issue. So is there a problem in the status quo? So the opening of government's main reason was this, that like students keep the problem school. This was their premise. That is why like those who have low academic ability will never ever enhance because they don't ask and those kind of things. Well, but that's, in the first place, that's not necessarily true because like you have friends, you have teachers, and all sorts of aspects. Why is friends so important? Because like friends, you help them when the other person is in difficulty. This is a relationship between friends. You might have been helped with that particular friend, or you may have helped the particular friend. If the person, no thank you, has a superiority in this academic ability, yes, this person will help a person who has a lower ability. We think that in the status quo, we actually help. But more than that, the closing government said, no, look, no, like you don't actually communicate and those kind of things. But there are many opportunities to actually communicate, especially in the context of schools. Maybe like doing games together or maybe doing sports together. No thank you. We think it is good. We think it is enough in the status quo. But more than that, even if they are shy, we think that the status quo is already enough. Because like we have like kids, if the person is supremely or like extremely low in grades, maybe like nearly zero, like we already have supremely tuition. If the result is really, really bad, no thank you, in the status. Even if this person is really, really shy and like never ask friends, teachers, and those kind of things, the teacher has this kind of obligation to like give this person a hand. So like we think that in the status quo, even this person actually like keeps this kind of problem. So we think the status quo is up. No, thank you. But more than that, in terms of the closing government's argument, in terms of isolation and those kind of things, because like the schools only teach like education for like the middle ability and those kind of things. Yes, we concede the fact that no, thank you, the classroom will be based on like teaching for the middle class, those who has like middle ability and those kind of things. Yes, that's true. No, thank you. But we will also teach for those who has higher specs as well. Because like, maybe if they finish the task really early, the teacher will like give additional tasks, maybe difficult question and those kind of things. Or maybe no, thank you. This person might actually ask this person to help another person that is having really difficulty because in a classroom there may be 40-50%. One teacher cannot run all. Maybe the teacher might ask the student to actually teach like those who are not like really like good at studying and those kind of things. We think that in the state school we can already like ensure this kind of like spectrum. But more than that, even if no thank you, this person is isolated, we don't think that's the criteria to take this proposal at all. Because maybe in the context of Japan, no thank you, a black student might be a minority. But that's not the reason we like make that person into a completely different class at all. We think that bullying is not the criteria to like isolate that person or like make that person into a completely different classroom. No, thank you. We think that the teachers have to do is to actually deal with bullying, not like put them into a different classroom and those kind of things. And especially in the context when they're flexible, we think we can do that. That's not the reason to take this proposal. But more than that, my partner's extension in terms of why we think that after taking this proposal, we will actually enhance the gap between the rich and the poor. Because we think that, especially considering the early age, when we think that the rich are well ahead. Maybe maybe they have special education for like brilliant students. Maybe they have private tutors. Especially this is extremely big. No, thank you. When they are young, and like the opening government actually considering the fact that it is really hard to actually catch up. So like after taking this proposal, the smart will be taught in a smart class, and the easy or like the person who is not in doesn't have good ability will still continue on being this kind of like no good ability class. We think this difference will be always exist because it's difficult to actually catch up. Never be able to catch up. This is problem, but before that opening.
Even we can concede exacerbating academic moral judgment happen, but it already exists. And rather, don't you think academic gap will be rather exacerbated, which is the basis of your discrimination?
No, because those has like handicap because you are poor and don't have like special education when you are young will never be able to catch up with the rich person who always receives difficult questions and those kinds. We think that the status quo is better because the poor also has a chance as well. In the classroom, you are taught like average classes and difficult questions as well. More than that, you may have chances to interact how to solve this kind of difficult question and those kind of things. In the status quo, the poor has a chance to actually catch up on the rich person who has the superiority just because they're rich. We think this is wrong. Moving on to my second issue in terms of social norm and those kind of things. in the first place, we think that even if we consider like Google like has like these smart students and only has smart people and those kind of things, because they're profit seekers, they also have to interact with the poor or like those who don't have like high specs as well. Because they are profit seekers, they have to meet the demands of the rich, and they also have to reach the demand of those who don't have like good knowledge and those kind of things. Because they are profit seekers, and because of their social norm, they also have to interact or enhance the communication skill with the people who have like really smart capability, and those who have not so like good academic ability, but have different aspects, different like characteristics. We think that if you want to reach or like realize the social norm, we mustn't take this proposal, and that is why we will to oppose this motion. Thank you.
I thank speaker for speech. Now all speeches are over. Thank you for nice cooperation.